Most days, before you even walk out the front door, you basically put on a suit of armor.
Right, yeah.
Not literally, obviously, but you
Right.
put on your professional armor for your boss and, like, your social armor for your friends.
Oh, and your highly curated digital armor for the internet, definitely.
Exactly. We just spend an enormous amount of our daily energy projecting this image that we have it all together,
Yeah.
that we are flawless, perfectly in control, and totally unaffected by the chaos of the world.
I mean, it is a defense mechanism, yeah. But historically, humans built those defenses for survival. We are biologically and psychologically wired to protect our vulnerabilities from a world that might, exploit them.
Right, because the alternative just feels...
Incredibly dangerous. Being completely open is terrifying for the human ego.
But then you encounter a piece of historical writing that basically demands you strip every single piece of that armor off.
Yeah, the texts that don't let you hide.
Exactly. A text that says, actually, the only way to get what you truly want is to stand there completely exposed and admit exactly how broken you are.
It's a radical shift in perspective.
It really is. And today's deep dive is into exactly that kind of text. We're looking at Guru Nanak Dev Ji's divine petitions for the Master's grace, and it is custom-tailored for those of you looking to extract raw psychological insights from ancient history.
It's a profoundly beautiful piece of source material.
Yeah, we are focusing specifically on excerpts from Rag Suhi 790. And before we even get into the words, it's worth noting that in the Sikh tradition, a rag isn't just a melody, right?
Right. It's a specific musical framework designed to evoke a very precise emotional state.
And Rag Suhi is traditionally associated with what exactly?
It's associated with deep, burning devotion, like an intense, almost agonizing longing for union.
Wow.
Yeah, so right out of the gate, this isn't just an abstract, dusty philosophical document.
It's a raw, emotional journey about human vulnerability.
That musical context is crucial because it sets the stakes. We're going to trace the thematic evolution of the human psyche as laid out in this text.
Where do we start?
We begin with the chaotic realization of our own ego, move into the desperate search for guidance, plunge into an absolute crisis of unworthiness, and finally arrive at a state of ultimate surrender and union.
Okay, let's unpack this chronologically then. Starting at that chaotic realization, the text opens with a section labeled Shalok, first Mehla.
Right.
And it starts with a plea. The speaker basically says, "O true Guru, bless me with your charity. You are the all-powerful giver."
Which sounds pretty standard on the surface.
Right. Normally when we hear the word charity, we think of a physical transaction, like money, food, resources, that kind of thing.
But the text immediately clarifies what is actually being requested here.
Yeah. The speaker wants the ability to subdue 5 very specific things: egotism, pride, sexual desire, anger, and self-conceit. They literally want to burn away greed.
What's fascinating here is that this represents a total inversion of how we usually operate.
Huh.
Well, think about it. Most of our daily efforts are spent trying to accumulate things, right? Status, wealth, validation.
Well, we're constantly adding to the resume.
Exactly. But here, the ultimate form of charity is subtraction. The speaker is asking for an intervention to dismantle the very things that the human ego uses to define itself.
I love thinking about this in a modern context because these 5 inner evils, egotism, anger, pride, and so on, they function exactly like malicious background apps running on your smartphone.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like you might not even consciously realize they're open, but they are constantly draining your battery. They're processing in the background, consuming your mental RAM, and keeping you from functioning properly.
And you find yourself exhausted at the end of the day.
Exactly. Because your Pride app has been running at 100% capacity trying to defend your image at work or whatever.
Yeah, that defensive armor we talked about.
But I do have to push back a little on this idea of just subduing them. Because modern psychology often tells us we need to, accept our flaws and integrate our shadows.
Right, the idea of radical self-acceptance.
Yeah. So is this text telling us to just violently suppress human nature? Like, are we just force quitting all our apps through sheer willpower?
I mean, if you try to force quit those aspects of human nature through sheer willpower, it almost always backfires.
You just end up super repressed.
You end up with repression, not liberation, exactly. What the text is actually describing is a mechanism of replacement, not just deletion.
Replacement with what?
Well, you cannot create a vacuum in the human psyche. The specific charity being requested here is the name of the Lord.
So how does that actually work mechanically? How does a name replace an ego?
Because the human ego fundamentally thrives on separation. It operates on this logic of, I am me, you are you, and I need to protect my territory.
Right, it's all about boundaries and defenses.
Exactly. Egotism, anger, pride, these are all tools of separation. But the practice of name, which is the continuous mindfulness and remembrance of the divine, it acts as a replacement by constantly reminding the brain of the infinite.
So it zooms you out.
It zooms you out massively. It is a grounding mechanism that systematically shrinks the I.
Oh, I see.
When you are constantly contemplating an infinite, universally connected reality, your individual ego starts to look incredibly small. You cannot maintain your arrogance or your petty angers when you are acutely aware that you are just a drop in a massive, infinite ocean.
It stars the background apps of the energy they need to run.
Exactly.
And the result of that replacement is beautifully described in the text. The speaker says, "Day and night, keep me ever fresh and new, spotless and pure. Let me never be soiled by sin."
That phrase, ever fresh and new, really stands out.
Yeah, it implies that this isn't a one-and-done deal, right?
Precisely. Spiritual purity here isn't a static achievement. It's not a certificate you frame on your wall that says, congratulations, you conquered your ego in 2026.
I wish it were that easy.
We all do. But the entropy of the human mind is real. If you stop the practice, the ego creeps back in.
The apps reopen themselves.
They absolutely do. That's why the text emphasizes day and night, because maintaining that ever-fresh state requires continuous active alignment with the name. It is a living, breathing hygiene of the soul.
But, knowing you need to replace those background apps and actually figuring out how to do it are two very different things.
It's incredibly difficult.
It's an incredibly isolating battle to fight inside your own head, and that's exactly where the text evolves from this solitary internal struggle into the search for external guidance.
Right. The shift in focus.
Yeah, we move into the stunning central metaphor where the text introduces the imagery of the singular husband-lord and the many soul brides.
The shift in scale here is magnificent. We move from the claustrophobic battlefield of the individual mind out to the threshold of the cosmos.
It says, "There is only the one husband-lord for all who stand at his door."
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. To navigate this for our modern years, how should you, the listener, interpret this one husband and many brides metaphor?
Because it's easy to get tangled up in the ancient sociology of it, right?
Exactly. Without getting bogged down in archaic human marriage politics, what is this actually saying?
You have to lift the metaphor entirely out of human gender dynamics and marital politics. It is a structural representation of the universe.
Okay, structurally, how does it work?
It is about the absolute singularity of the divine, the one husband, the ultimate source of truth, protection, and love, contrasted with the infinite multiplicity of humanity.
So all of us.
All of us. Every human soul is positioned as a bride. It represents the posture of the human soul relative to the infinite. We are inherently the seekers, the ones longing for union with something greater than ourselves.
And the text paints this vivid picture of all these soul brides standing at the door of the divine. But it makes a crucial distinction.
Yes, it does.
It says that only some of the brides are truly imbued with his love. And the other brides, the ones who are struggling, the ones whose background apps are still draining their batteries, they go up to those happy imbued brides and ask them for news of their husband-lord.
It's such a deeply recognizable human behavior.
Right. It's like modern networking. Like junior employees desperately asking a mentor who has made it what the CEO is really like.
Or, to use another analogy, if you are a compass needle frantically spinning around, completely lost, and you suddenly see a few other compass needles perfectly still.
Locked dead onto true north.
Exactly. Your immediate instinct is to get as close to them as possible to figure out what magnetic field they are tapped into.
That makes perfect sense.
It highlights the soul's profound need for spiritual community. We cannot always find true north on our own, especially when our own ego is generating so much magnetic interference.
The static is just too loud.
So we naturally seek out those who have already achieved intimacy with the divine. We observe their peace, their stillness, and we ask them, how did you quiet the noise?
What does it actually feel like to be in that presence?
Right. The struggling brides aren't asking for theological lectures. They're asking for news of the husband-lord. They want experiential evidence of the divine from someone who has lived it.
But here's where the psychological reality really sets in. Because seeking guidance from others who have found peace is logical, but anyone who has ever been in that position knows the despair that usually follows.
Oh, the comparison track.
Exactly. You look at these beautifully still compass needles, these people who seem completely imbued with love, and then you look at your own spinning, chaotic mind.
The contrast is devastating.
It really is. You start comparing your messy, behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel of spiritual perfection. And the text doesn't shy away from this. It plunges right into what I can only describe as a profound crisis of unworthiness.
It is a necessary collapse.
Yeah.
The text moves from observing the external community to a brutal, unflinching internal inventory.
The speaker looks at all the other happy soul brides and suddenly says, "All are imbued with love for their husband, Lord. I am a discarded bride. What good am I?"
It's heartbreaking.
Let that sink in. What good am I? The speaker laments that their body is filled with so many faults that the master doesn't even turn his thoughts to them.
The feeling of being entirely overlooked.
Yeah, they express this agonizing longing, saying, "I am a sacrifice to those who praise the Lord." And then comes this incredibly desperate plea. The speaker acknowledges that all the nights are given to the happy soul brides and begs, "I am a discarded bride. If only I could have even one night with him."
The emotional weight of that singular phrase, "if only I could have even one night," is just staggering.
It really hits you.
It strips away all pretense, all bargaining, all sense of entitlement.
So what does this all mean? Because this raises a massive question for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the ultimate end goal here is to blend perfectly with the divine, to find peace, why does the text require the speaker to hit this absolute rock bottom first?
That's a very fair question.
Like wallowing in these faults, literally crying out, "My body is filled with so many faults." Isn't that just a different form of ego? The ego of self-pity?
This raises an important question about the nature of surrender.
Is spiritual destruction, this total emotional collapse, a strict prerequisite for spiritual creation in this framework?
That is the exact paradox at the heart of this deep dive. Is it self-pity or is it something else? In this context, it is not wallowing. It is the mechanism of absolute radical honesty.
Radical honesty.
Think back to the armor we discussed at the beginning and the ego from the first section. The hardest thing for the human ego to do is to admit that it is bankrupt.
Oh, it fights that realization tooth and nail.
It will try to buy its way into grace. It'll try to be good enough or smart enough or spiritual enough. But the infinite cannot be bought or earned. The only way to receive grace is to offer an entirely empty vessel.
Because if your cup is full of your own pride, even the pride of thinking you can fix yourself, there's no room for the name.
Exactly. When the speaker says, "What good am I?" and calls themselves a discarded bride, they are finally dropping the armor. They are ceasing all negotiations with the universe.
They're just surrendering.
Hitting that spiritual rock bottom is a prerequisite, because rock bottom is the only foundation solid enough to build upon. You cannot experience true union as long as you are holding on to any illusion of your own independent perfection.
That makes a lot of sense.
The desperation for just one night signifies that the seeker finally understands the true, incomparable value of the divine connection. They recognize that a single moment of real presence is worth more than a lifetime of superficial existence.
So the absolute vulnerability isn't a failure of the spiritual path, it is the door opening.
Exactly.
And the text proves this because it doesn't leave us stranded in that despair. The intense longing of the discarded bride pushes them to take the ultimate action. We move into the final section, the pore.
Which literally acts as a step or a rung on a ladder, elevating the text to its climax right at the doorstep of the divine.
The speaker has navigated the inner battle, faced the crushing weight of their own unworthiness, and now they make their final stand. The text reads, "I am a beggar at your door, begging for charity. O Lord, please grant me your mercy and give to me."
It's a full circle moment back to the opening plea for charity.
Right, but the posture has completely changed. And then they ask, "As Gurmukh, unite me, your humble servant, with you, that I may receive your name."
That transition is everything.
But before we look at the result of this, we really need to clarify that term. What exactly does it mean to ask for this as Gurmukh?
Gurmukh is a foundational concept here. It literally translates to one who is facing the guru or one who is spiritually guided.
Okay.
This is in direct contrast to a manmukh, which is someone who faces their own mind, driven entirely by their own ego and desires.
Ah, so the backride apps again.
Exactly. By asking to be united, as Gurmukh, the speaker is confirming that they have fully abandoned their own self-will. They're asking to be pulled into union, not on their own merits, not through their own cleverness, but purely through the grace and guidance of the true guru.
And it is at that exact moment of total surrender that the ultimate request is granted. The beggar at the door is brought inside, and the description of this union is breathtaking.
It really is.
The text says, "Then the unstruck melody of the Shabbat will vibrate and resound, and my light will blend with the light."
My light will blend with the light. It is the complete dissolution of the boundary between the individual self and the infinite divine.
Let's really dig into the mechanics of that phrasing, though. First, the unstruck melody of the Shabbat.
Yes, let's look at that.
We need to pause here because this is a mind-bending concept. Every single sound we understand in our physical reality is the result of friction or collision.
Right. Something hitting something else.
It is something being struck. A hammer hits a piano string, a drumstick hits a skin, vocal cords vibrate and push against air molecules. Sound, as we know it, requires physical action.
It requires a physical trigger.
But an unstruck melody, to me, it's like realizing there is a cosmic radio frequency that has been broadcasting in the background of the universe since the dawn of time.
That is a brilliant way to think about it.
Like, the music is playing continuously without an instrument, without a musician striking a chord. You just finally tuned your dial to hear it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the physics and metaphysics of that analogy are incredibly apt. The unstruck melody represents the eternal, underlying vibratory truth of the universe.
The hum of creation.
Yes, the hum of creation itself. It requires no external physical action to maintain. It simply is. But if it is always playing, why can't we hear it?
Because of the background apps. The static of our own ego, the noise of our anger and pride.
Precisely. The Shabbat, the divine word or sound, is always vibrating. But as long as you're a manmuk, facing your own mind, the internal noise of your ego literally deafens you to it.
You're just generating too much of your own static.
The transition we see here is profound. The discarded bride, who just moments ago was weeping at the door in total isolation, has quieted their internal noise so completely that they can finally perceive this universal frequency.
Wow.
And in doing so, their individual spark of consciousness, their light, loses its hard edges and merges seamlessly into the universal light.
It is the ultimate resolution of the imposter syndrome they felt earlier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You cannot be an imposter when the you has dissolved into the everything.
And what I find so empowering is how the text concludes. Because it doesn't end with the speaker dissolving into a puff of smoke and leaving the physical world behind.
No, they are still very much here.
The realization of this union fundamentally changes how they exist right here, in reality. The speaker says, "Within my heart, I sing the glorious praises of the Lord." And then, the final earth-shattering realization. The Lord himself is pervading and permeating the world, so fall in love with him.
It completely flips the narrative of the seeker's journey.
It really does.
For at the beginning of the text, the divine was positioned as something distant, a master to beg from, a husband-lord hidden behind a closed door, an entity separate from the self.
Right, something far away.
But through the agonizing process of stripping away the ego, acknowledging absolute unworthiness and blending light with light, the final truth is revealed.
Which is,
The divine isn't just behind a door. The divine is the door. The divine is the floor, the sky, the other soul brides. He is permeating everything.
it means the sacred isn't something you have to escape the world to find. It is woven into the very fabric of the everyday world. You just had to change your spiritual posture to see it.
Exactly. When the ego is finally subdued, you realize you have always been standing in the presence of what you were desperately looking for. The separation was merely an illusion generated by your own mind.
So let's synthesize this incredible journey for you, our listener, because there's just so much to take away from this.
That really is.
We started by looking at the inner battle. We recognize that the 5 evils, our pride, our anger, our need for control, are actively draining our spiritual batteries, keeping us isolated.
And we learned that the antidote isn't suppression.
Right, it's the active replacement of the ego with the name, shrinking our sense of self against the infinite.
Then we explored the deep vulnerability of the seeker. We looked at the discarded bride who feels entirely unworthy when comparing their internal chaos to the external peace of others.
The spiritual imposter syndrome.
Exactly. But we discovered that hitting that spiritual rock bottom, that feeling of utter unworthiness, isn't a failure. It is the necessary emptying of the vessel. Absolute radical honesty about our flaws is the only way to drop the armor and open the door to grace.
And finally, we witnessed that ultimate surrender. The moment where the beggar stops negotiating, asks for guidance as a gurmukh, and is brought into union.
The individual light blends into the universal light.
And the internal noise is quieted just enough to finally hear that unstruck melody, realizing that the divine has been permeating the world all along. This text from Guru Nanak Dev Ji serves as this timeless psychological blueprint.
It truly does.
It proves that acknowledging our deep brokenness is actually the very first step toward profound cosmic connection.
It challenges us to stop fighting our vulnerabilities and start using them as the very bridge that connects us to a larger reality.
Which brings us right back to where we started today. We talked about that suit of armor you put on every single morning, the defenses you meticulously build to hide your flaws, to project perfection, and to keep the world at a safe distance.
The armor that keeps you deaf to the melody.
Exactly. The text concludes that the connection you are searching for is already pervading and permeating the world around you, accompanied by this beautiful, continuous, unstruck melody. So, I want to leave you with this lingering thought to chew on today.
What's the thought?
If that universal melody is always playing, broadcasting right now in the background of your life, what specific internal noise, what piece of stubborn pride, what lingering anger, what fear of being seen as a discarded bride do you need to quiet down today so you can finally take off the armor and hear it?